and welcome you to our session called Classroom Management Strategies That Work Most of the Time. That's my parentheses, because I don't begin to think that I've got all the answers. And so I'm hoping that we can, push on some of these too and critique some of them. But I am going to share some strategies with you today. As part of the session, I'm going to be using, I'm going to share a bunch of strategies, obviously, and I have a Google Doc that I created if it's helpful for you. So I'm going to go ahead and share that in the chat. And when you click on it, it should prompt you to make your own copy that then belongs to you, and you can do whatever you want with. So that's a fun little trick I learned from Treadway last year when she had a bunch of resources in ACA, the copy feature. Just take off the word edit and you put the word copy and it should prompt you to make a copy. That's kind of fun. So I do have, of course, a visual. So I'm going to go ahead and get my visual going here. And you should see my PowerPoint now. And we'll see if it does its good job. Okay, are you seeing what looks like a PowerPoint, or no, you're not? I don't really love the two screens sometimes. I'm gonna
It was
probably,
there and now it's gone.
yeah, I took it away. How about now? But now I can't see you, so I don't like that either. I might just keep it like this. It's a little easier to navigate anyway. So we'll just jump right in. You're hopefully seeing, are you seeing anything now? No?
It's you.
Oh, well, that's not good enough. Let's try this one more time. Now you're seeing something.
And we can see you at the top too while you're talking.
Okay, well, that's good. Great. Well, what I want to start with is asking you all to tell me what a well-managed class looks like. When you think of a well-managed class, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What does it feel like? And I am really hoping that we can come off mute, have some discussion about this, throw things in the chat. Tell me what you think about well-managed classes.
There's a discussion that's going on that's relevant to the content being discussed in class.
Okay, on topic. Great. What else?
Where if we're going with feelings, I guess a space where everybody feels they can share their opinion and have it listened to, or thoughts, not necessarily opinions all the time.
Yeah. So there's the feeling of, could we use the word safety? Okay, feeling of safety. And I want to point out, Josh did talk about discussion, right? There's like talking happening and it's on topic and people feel safe. What else?
Distraction free.
Okay. You want to unpack distraction for us, Aaron? What is a distraction in a class?
People that are not engaged in discussion.
Okay.
Or an off-topic discussion.
Okay.
Or sleeping. Or cell phones.
Yeah. So stuff that students might be doing that's taking away from the main thing that's supposed to be happening. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Karen, what you got?
I was going to say engagement.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of along the lines of what everyone else is saying. They're paying attention, they're adding to the discussion, they're not sitting there on their whatever social media in class while you're trying to do something. So active participation, and to me, that's a successful class. We've got them engaged in the content.
Yeah. Yeah. All of that sounds, I mean, that all kind of sounds like what I think of too. I do want to point out that we've acknowledged that a well-managed class might have noise in it, right? There might be sounds coming out of somebody's mouth that's not the teacher, right? There might be things happening. And I think that's a really important distinction to make, because there are times in our history, not so long ago, when a well-managed class was a silent class where only the teacher was talking, especially in higher ed. right? And if you walked by and the room was noisy and students were out of their chairs, something was going down, right? Like that was not a well-managed class. And so I think we've moved beyond that, but it's important to just recognize that we are talking about, when we talk about engaged learning, we're talking about student activity. We're talking about students participating actively with their voices and their bodies. And that's going to come back in just a minute. So this session is, again, focused on strategies that work. And, you know, before I came into this role, I did have a number of years of classroom teaching when I was doing a lot of different kinds of classroom teaching. So just as a quick recap, I spent my first 10 years teaching K-12. I was primarily 6th and 8th grade language arts. So lots of classroom management. You know, I really, really developed some skills in that area with those populations of students, because they expect a lot from their teachers. They expect to be guided and helped and supported, and it takes a lot of classroom management skills to do that. Then I moved into teaching full-time at the community college, and I was working with students who are not, quote, not college ready, right? So developmental students and students who were taking classes in English because they had to for a specific program. So for example, I would have a group of 25 to 30 students who were in the Caterpillar technician program, and they wore uniforms, and they came in and they, you know, would usually have their arms crossed at the beginning of the morning. And they would be like, you know, I dare you to teach me English today. So definitely some resistance. And I love a challenge. And so that was something I was really comfortable with, but it takes work. And then my last teaching stint, the 4 years before I came to Blue Ridge, I was working in residential mental health. And the challenges there were very different. Students knew how to be well-behaved students, and they were not there to be in college. They were there to get mental health support. And oftentimes their emotional state and their need for mental health assistance would overtake the class. And so we would have moments of disruption and dysregulation, and then we'd have to regroup and move forward. And so yeah, I've made lots of mistakes. I've had a really great adventure in classroom management, and I'm hoping that some of the things I've learned along the way are things that you have also learned, or things that you're open to thinking about today. So outcome-wise, these are the 3 things I hope you walk away with. I want you to be able to connect some of the strategies I share with very specific pedagogical principles and philosophies. So I'm going to talk about that to start. I also really hope that you can, by the end of this, identify some specific strategies that you might want to beef up on or try implementing if you haven't tried them before. And then, you know, my big takeaway hope for you is that you find one thing today that you're like, I'm going to try that. I'm going to do that next week. Because if we can find one thing to take from a PD session, that's usually a start of a win for us, right? If I could get one thing out of it. So that's my hope for us. Any questions about the outcomes before we move on? Okay, well, let's get rolling then. So pedagogical principles. So, you know, we all get to the place where we are in our teaching where we're like, I don't know why I do what I do, right? But I've had some time to think about it as I prepared for this session. And these are 4 things that really drive the way that I think of teaching. And they're gonna definitely, that's where the strategies are couched. And so if you hear a strategy today that rubs you wrong, it may be because we come from a different philosophical place, a different place of understanding about teaching. And that is okay. But that might be why we're like on opposite sides of something. We'll start with the top one, and that is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I've only got the first 2 listed there because I really just want us to stay focused on those. We know that if our students log in or make it into our classroom, they're alive, right? They've got oxygen right now, so they are surviving in the moment. But we don't know much beyond that sometimes. And so our job is to always be aware that some of our students are coming to us feeling unsafe, either physically or emotionally, psychologically, right? There might be things happening for them. And so as a teacher, I always keep that in mind, and it helps me be mindful with my words. It helps me be thoughtful about my reactions. It gives me more space for curiosity. And so that's my dominating principle now as a teacher. And I try to do that with everybody, but especially when I think about my role in a teaching and serving capacity. The second principle here is really a learning theory. Constructivism is a learning theory that comes from Dewey's progressivism. They're closely related. This idea that we create knowledge together, that learning is a collaborative, engaging process, and that it is not, the teacher does not give knowledge to the student creates knowledge through various experiences. And some of those experiences, yes, are hearing information from an instructor, but there's a lot more activity going on that creates the learning, that makes the learning happen. So constructivism made a lot of sense to me as an English instructor because my students were creating texts and learning to communicate through feedback they were getting from me and their peers. I can understand why constructivism may not make as much sense or be as readily applicable if a course is very content driven and the teacher feels like it's their job to impart knowledge. I think constructivism can feel a little bit more challenging there, but I do believe it has a place in all learning. The third bullet point here is coming from Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks is a feminist theorist, and she wrote extensively about the structures that are in place in schools and in learning environments, and how teachers have to be aware of those structures and be thoughtful about the students and how those students might interact with those structures. And put more simply, students are taught that to be a good student, you are quiet and compliant and you don't ask questions. Well, Hooks believes that to be a learner, you have to do things that are maybe considered unruly, right? Like you have to ask questions, you have to challenge, you have to be a disruptor in order to really learn. And if you think about the highest levels of learning that we have, like in graduate school, that's where they get to argue, right? Seminar, oh, you have a right to argue now. It becomes problematic when a second grader is asking a question of a teacher, right? And what Hooks is pushing us to think about is when students act in ways that are disruptive or unruly, that we really ask ourselves, well, why am I seeing that as a disruptive or unruly behavior? Isn't that student just challenging me so that they can better understand, right? And sometimes that's not happening, of course, but sometimes it is. Sometimes they really are just trying to learn. So that's that third bullet point. And then the last one is all about emotion, right? Effective learning with an A is the idea that we learn when our social emotional capacities are triggered or turned on, right? And so we are going to learn more when we can, and we're going to be motivated to learn more when we have an emotional connection to the material. And this connects directly to us as instructors, right? It connects to the content area, it connects to the classroom community. And you may have had your own experience with this. If you ever took a class that you didn't like the content area, you didn't like the teacher, and you didn't find any relationships with students in that classroom space, you may not have enjoyed that class very much, and you may not have done very well. You may not have learned very much, right? On the other hand, if you had a class where you loved the teacher, you thought the content was fascinating, and you loved all your classmates, wow, you learned so much that semester, right? And that's what we're talking about. So while it's not the case that students have to like us and want to be our friends, no, I'm not saying that. Students do have to find something in you that they are drawn to, that they find interesting, attractive, in the sense of like, I want to know more from that person. I find that person to be somebody I am interested in being around and learning from. And same goes for the community of students that they're with. So anything that we can do to ignite that affect, that emotional connection, that's going to be a plus for the student. Before I move on, I'm curious, any thoughts or questions, anything that you want to, add to the discussion at this point?
As you were describing each of your theories there, I think the engaged pedagogy is basically the same thing. It's a rewording of constructivist learning theory, because constructivist, the person has to be engaged, right? It's activity. They're learning through activity. They're engaged in some way. Well, engaged pedagogy is the same thing. They're engaged, whether that's asking questions or kind of disputing something because they don't understand it. They're still engaged. That is activity. I think it's a paraphrasing of the same theory.
I appreciate that point, Karen. And I think you're right almost 100% of the way. And I think that there are people who would still find it frustrating if their authority is challenged in the classroom. And Hooks would say that a challenge of authority in the classroom could be a mechanism for learning for some students. And so I think that she was credited with something actually called confrontational pedagogy, because the idea was like a student has to confront both the material and sometimes even the agent who is conveying the material, right? Like this, they're going to push against it. And she reframed it and used this word engage. So that's why I'm honoring that word. But that would be the only time, because I don't know if constructivism really gets to that piece of it, this adversarial piece that sometimes comes up.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. So if you add in the piece of, confrontation and adversarial,
Right.
so yeah, that makes it a little bit different. But most of the time, well, in the classes that I teach, most of the time people are questioning what you said because they don't understand it yet,
Right.
or they're confrontational because they thought it was one thing and they're trying to hang on to that and say, but wait a minute, what
Right.
about if it was like this?
Yeah.
And that helps them when you talk them through whatever it was they thought it was.
Right.
Hopefully what you're wanting is for them to come away with the, oh, now I get it.
And two things, I would say engaged pedagogy could lead to the teacher saying that instead, right? The teacher has space to learn and grow in an engaged pedagogy. And I would also say that 50 years ago, that student would be seen as a troublemaker.
Yeah. And no, sometimes they do say stuff and you're like, oh, I hadn't heard that. That's something new. I mean,
Right.
especially in healthcare, there's always something new. So
Yeah.
sometimes they say something new and you haven't heard of this new drug they just came out with, or just something like that.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything else before we move on? Okay. Well, I'm going to now roll us into these strategies. And again, feel free to use that Google Doc if it's helpful. I am going to ask for you to try something out as kind of a fun little experiment. You have the Zoom menu on your screen. You can hopefully find that. And down in that Zoom menu, you have the little heart react. This one has a smiley face, but it's very similar. So in that heart react menu, you've got some options. And as I go through each strategy, I just thought it might be fun, especially if you've got the gallery view up or you can see your peers, you can put your little reaction in. I'm not going to tell you what your reaction should be for yes, I like this one, or no, I hate this one. I want you to be creative. So, but we should be able to figure out, like if you put in a devil face, then yeah, see, that's a good one for like, right? But whatever you want to use, that might be a fun way for us to show this is a strategy that I am comfortable with. If there's one that you're like not crazy about or you don't like, find an emoji that shows us that you don't like that one. That's great. I want to hear that and we can talk about it. And then if you've got one you're like, I don't know, I'm sure there's an emoji for that feeling too. So without further ado, here comes a bunch of stuff of what Sarah thinks. So Sarah thinks you should get there first. I believe that anytime we have the opportunity to be the first one in the classroom, we should try to do that. I understand that that can sometimes be very difficult based on our schedules and classroom availability. And I know too well how important it is for us to set the tone. So when we are in the room and we set the tone for learning before the student comes in, either by having everything ready to go, maybe we've got music going, maybe it's just that we've settled ourselves and there's a smile on our face when they walk in the door, being in the room first can make a huge difference. We've all been that person who walked in halfway through a class coming in the room, or even after the whole class is seated. That's a different vibe, right? And so when we can get there first, I'm talking to two communications teachers. Space matters. Who controls the space matters. It's a nonverbal communication. And if we own that territory, then we have control over the tone of that territory. I definitely think that it's helpful with today's technology needs. We also have this need to get the tech ready. So if we can get in there and we can make sure everything's pulled up, then we're not messing with it when they're walking in and we should already be starting class. I want to share with you a document, and it's my little gift from me to you. This is a quote from a professor that was shared with me in my teaching career in the early 90s, well, I guess mid 90s, and it stuck with me for a long time. Now it pertains to children. When you open it, you'll see that it's really talking about children there, not adults, but I think it means the exact same thing. So I have come to a frightening conclusion. This is the quote. I am the decisive element in the classroom. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides if a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated and a child humanized or dehumanized. I don't know what it was about that quote at that time in my life that made it mean so much, but it was such an important reminder to me. And again, I was working with adolescents, so maybe that was part of it. Like, just check in with yourself here, Sarah. But there were days where I know that I did not show up as my best self, and I took it out on those students. And we've all done that. We've all been not our best selves, and our students, experience something other than our best selves. So by getting there first, I can get myself ready, and I can then make a conscious, intentional choice that I'm going to be ready for student learning. Any thoughts on this one? I didn't see reaction buttons yet, but I was also reading a quote, so. Now you're looking for reactions. Go ahead, Jenny.
I agree with the prep for the boards, because in Patton, they're forever not working and sound doesn't work. And so, yeah, if nothing else, make sure your sound works.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing when you think everything's ready to go and then it's just
Right,
not.
and then it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I also agree with getting there first, because I feel like we can model a proper interaction or positive interaction
Yeah,
with our students.
absolutely. And there's going to be students, when they see that you're there early, they're going to start coming early. They like that extra time with you. And you will have students who get to class 20 minutes early just because they want to talk to somebody, and that's also a gift, right? To have that extra time with a student. All right, let's move on. This one might seem basic, but for some of us, it can be very challenging. Learn our students' names. We know from some research that we've done, unfortunately, too often in higher ed, teachers don't know students' names, and students know this. And they have admitted that they will not put in as much effort. They will not participate as much. They will not feel like they are part of a class if they suspect or know that a teacher does not know their name. Knowing someone's first name, and furthermore, knowing just a little bit about them goes such a long way. And there are ways to do it. Getting students to know each other's names is also incredibly important, and we have to model that by knowing their names first, because then we can pair people up. We can say, hey, you two go talk to each other, right? And again, it will increase participation if they know that we know who they are. So how do we do that, right? Name tents can be really helpful, and some of us have to use them because of the number of students we have. If you've ever taken pictures of your students and labeled them, you are not alone. Other people do that. That's a thing that's okay to do. I make a very public attempt to learn names when working with students by practicing in front of them. And I used to do like the whole silly thing at the end of the first day of classes. I would go around and I would say everybody's name, and I would tell them the reason this is so important to me is because I want you to know that I want you here in this class, and I want you to know that I know who you are, and we can build a relationship now that I know your name. So I just made it very overt. I'm interested to know your thoughts. Is this hard? Is this something you already do? And how do you do it?
So it's challenging for us because we have large classes. We start out with, we try to start out with 70. We have 72 seats. And it takes time to learn their names, but I do make a point, sort of what you're saying in the beginning. When I first get a whole new group of students, I tell them, I want to learn your name. And so I'm going to ask you to tell me your name when you speak. And I go around the room and I try to repeat names. And if I can't remember, I tell them, don't be offended. There's only one of me. There's 45 of you. trying to learn names, but I'll get there. I'll get to know you all, stuff like that. I tell them I'm trying to learn their names and I'm sorry, it's going to take me some time. And I also ask people how to pronounce their names.
Thank you.
So is it Anna or is it Anna? How do you, and is that the name you go by? Because a lot of people will go by a different name from what we have in the roster. So I make a point and I'm pretty open about it. It's going to take me time. Forgive me. Don't be offended. I'm trying to learn all of your names.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about pronunciation. When we can do it privately and practice with the student, that can be helpful. That's not always possible. And we can ask for forgiveness when we mispronounce a name, or if we were ever to use what's referred to as a dead name, right? Like a name that a student no longer goes by, but might be on our roster, just having the humility in that moment to be like, I'm so sorry. I apologize. Please say your name correctly for me. And I'm practicing. Like, that's helpful to a student to know that it's important to us.
Yeah, and I've never had anybody get upset if I've said it wrong. I'm, because I'm just pretty matter of fact that I'm trying to learn your name. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did I pronounce that correctly? And they, so far, it's been well received.
Okay, let's move on. Setting clear expectations. I feel like this is one that we think we do until we realize we didn't. And then we have to go back and catch ourselves, right? The reason this is important is because it's part of that safety piece, right? When we are transparent and we tell students what we expect, we give them the ability to predict, and predictability is safety. So if I know what to expect, I know that this is what you're expecting of me, then I know how to show up. And as often as we can, making those expectations visible to students in a syllabus so that they can refer back to it, that's also helpful. I like to use positive behavior expectations. And I've got an example here with my 5 Ps. That can cover a lot. Those 5 Ps can cover a lot. I was just thinking about, I always used to cover like academic integrity under Be Proud. And I would do the same with AI use. I would say, turn in work that you are proud of because you put your own effort into it, So I would cover a lot of things within these 5 Ps. I think sometimes we imagine that because this is college, students know how to behave, and they may not know what your pet peeve is. So if you've got a pet peeve, please make sure that that's listed as something that doesn't fly with you, right? Some teachers are not okay with food and drink in the classroom. Other teachers don't care at all, right? Those are the kinds of things that teachers need to broadcast widely so students know how to show up. And I have a note here about class rules. I think it can be really helpful to set group norms and to talk about those shared norms with the class. And as the teacher, we are still responsible for ensuring that students feel safe in the classroom space and that we feel comfortable leading that classroom. So we still always have, of course, the right to establish additional rules or to modify rules for us. This is not a democracy. I'm still the teacher, right? Comments or questions about setting clear expectations?
I have a question about class rules.
Yeah.
I would love to get feedback from everybody. Does anyone have students co-create the rules with you? So I have 3 or 4 rules set, but then ask students what's important to them for class participation.
How does it work, Josh? Like, you're still doing it, right?
I'm trying, yeah. I do it because I want them to have ownership in the classroom. And so on the first day I have 4 or 5 rules, but then I ask students what's important to you, because I want to show the student that they have power.
I think it's a fantastic strategy. And
I do too.
if it's working well for you, I think that you should stick with it for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm curious what some of their rules are. Can you share any rules that they?
Yeah, a lot of it is don't interrupt someone when they're talking. Please pay attention when I'm giving my speech. It's very basic.
Yeah, it's great.
So I have no problem letting my rules be known, and I'm real upfront about it at the beginning. I find if you get ahead of it on day 1, then you don't have as many problems. And I'm an area where we're talking about controversial things on like the daily, so they have to know day one what they can and cannot do and what I expect out of them if we're having discussions, so that, and I put it under the guise of everybody has to feel safe in here, so if we have different opinions, we should be able to share them. But I also started this semester, at least in my online classes, putting a purpose statement on every assignment for like, it's not busy work, because I don't do busy work. This is why I'm telling you to do it. This is how it relates to the class content. And this is why you should do it on your own and not with the robot. And I'm gonna see how it works out in terms of robot usage.
I'm super excited to hear how that goes. It ties in really nicely with one we're going to get to in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, I'm going to check in with y'all. I am wondering if you all are finding this so incredibly engaging that you just forgot to do reactions, or if you just have no reaction. Aaron says yes, he's so engaged. I don't care.
Forgot.
Yeah, I don't care. I just wanted to call you out for just a second. Some focus on yeah, feel free to play with those reactions because they're fun. And they tell us what you think. So let's talk about this next one. This is one that I think you've heard a lot about because we hear about it from students. Students will talk about how well a course is organized, especially an online course, but even a face-to-face, right? They'll talk about like, oh, we never knew what we were going to do and da 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 da. Consistency creates safety again. So when we can create structure for our students and they have predictability, then they offload that part of their, that mental process goes away and they can really focus on the learning. We sometimes, I think that it's boring to do the same thing the same way every day because we're teaching 4 preps or whatever. That's not what their experience is. They've got 4 different people doing class, right? And so for them, you are a novelty, and how you do class, being consistent from day to day actually feels really safe and very secure. So as long as if you can create a structure that you can work within and be fairly consistent with it, you're going to find that your students settle better and they're going to be more productive during class. That said, I think making it visible really makes a difference as well. So putting an agenda up or saying this is going to be kind of our class routine. We're always going to go through class this way, except for on very special days, like whatever project days, test days, whatever. And then if you can have a simple, repeatable format, both for yourself and for the students, that can also be really helpful. So those are some ways that, again, we can create that predictability and that safety. Comments, questions, reactions. Aaron, what you got?
I'm not doing that well in that department, I don't think.
No? Talk more.
It just depends. I have a record number of students this semester, so I find myself running out of time for my in-person classes. And yeah, it's a struggle getting in some of the content every week. This week mainly.
Yeah.
So
It's not your job to say all the things they have to learn, right? You know that, right?
right.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I really don't have a choice, right? I'm gonna have to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to do some upside down and flipped up teaching.
Yeah.
Flipped classroom.
We can be the highlight reel. We are not a textbook, right?
Right.
That's not our job.
Right.
I know there's different levels of expectation around that in different areas of the college, but they
Right.
have a book, they have content that's available online. You get to be the highlight reel.
I will be the highlight reel.
Sorry, I don't know why I was using that phrase, but it's true. Yeah, this is hard to do. I get it. And it feels better for us too when we do it. So
Yeah.
You can do, I'm sorry if it.
No, go
goes
ahead.
off, but, I find, well, mine are all organized the same way every week and I've got no problems with organization stuff, but you can also, I like to give them reminders at the end of the week because they forget you exist, just like you forget they exist or want to forget they exist. So, I think having a reminder you can set them up on my courses to go out scheduled. So
Right.
every Friday at the same time, every Friday, they get an announcement from me saying, hey, don't forget these things are due. And then I've helped them out and refreshed, what was going on. And it happens every single week. So they have consistency that way too.
Yeah. Yeah, consistent due dates, consistent announcements. That's a really helpful point. Thank you, Jenny, especially in online classes, but also face to face, right? Yeah. All right, this is kind of tied in with what Jenny was talking about before with purpose, right? We know, again, when we think about affective learning, that we want to connect their interests to whatever it is that we're teaching. And so anytime we can find out what their purpose is and then connect our purpose with their purpose, oh, it's like magic. So we can do this by asking simple questions at the beginning of the semester, learning about their long-term goals, learning about their career aspirations, finding out what other things they like besides the program of study that they're going into, because it might be part of their why as well. And sometimes a student may not understand how the content relates, and we have to help lead them to that understanding. And that can happen through a conversation, but it can also happen in a class activity, right? I think a reflection activity that directly prompts them to think, how could you use this if, or where might this show up for you, and get them to make those connections. Your purpose statement at the beginning of assignments, Jenny, is really getting them to like bring back to their why. Like, this is why we're doing this, and this thing is going to impact your ability to learn in this course. And then if they can attach, well, I want to learn this course because I have this other goal, they're halfway there already with your purpose statement. Other thoughts or comments about finding out their why?
I just have to say it's funny. Of course, the students who are taking my classes, I teach in the nursing program. So the students who are taking my classes want to become a nurse.
Right,
So they already know the why.
right,
And it's funny that I have to remind them, you need to know this because
right.
you have to take a licensure exam at the end of this, and you might get asked this sort of stuff because we're overwhelming them with loads of information and they just want to know, do I have to know all the meds and I'm like, maybe it could be on NCLEX.
Right, right. And that's a big why. But there's also, I know there are times too, Karen, where you and your colleagues say things like, this is going to show up in clinical this week. You're going to see this when you're doing your simulation, right? There's other whys that are directly related to that week or even that day, right? And then there also might be whys that are related to their personal life or their special interest area of nursing. So they may have multiple whys. That NCLEX is the big why, right? There might be little whys.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it just sort of amuses me though that they already have the why there.
Mm-hmm.
They're there for a very defined purpose, and we do still need to help them remember.
Yeah, for sure.
You could be taking care of this patient. It's important that
Right.
XYZ. You could have this person or you want a license. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing this, because it's hard. Learning is hard.
It is. Yeah,
And you have to remind them why they need to learn all this stuff.
for sure. Let's go into this one. Okay, so I kind of prompted you right away to start engaging by talking to me about what a classroom looks like that's engaged. That was my attempt in this Zoom call to start with activity. I believe that as a good constructivist would, that students learn when students do. And so the more that we have them talking, the more that we have them engaging and doing activity, the more likely it is that they are going to do the learning, okay? Colleagues of mine who've talked about, oh, we covered this and we covered that, and well, who talked about it? Well, I did. Well, then you covered it. And whether they learned it is a different question, right? So the less that we talk, usually the more that they are talking and learning. Which is why I do like a flipped classroom model for a classroom activity opportunity. Active students are also more likely to meet behavior expectations because a lot of behavior expectations in the college setting come from boredom. And so if we are engaging students and having them get together and do things and be productive during class, they're going to find value in why they're showing up to begin with. And they're going to be too busy learning and engaging to do the other stuff on their phones or whatever. So I really encourage us to think about that. Starting class with an opening activity, having something that they should be doing in the first 5 minutes of class is a great way to get them started in that space, right? Instead of like easing into class with you going on and on up in the front because they're not listening anyway, get them doing something. Put the pressure on them to get started with class And then as much as possible, think about that 15-minute rule. All of us get antsy after 15 minutes. All of us need a change of state after 15 minutes. So anytime we can be varying class time every 15 minutes, including activity. If they're sitting there doing something together in groups for more than 15 minutes, it might be good to bring them all back together and have a little moment or give them a chance to, because 15 minutes with in a small group can also be too much. So keep that in mind as well. Comments and questions about the 15-minute rule or starting with activities? Agreed? Yeah.
Are we gonna count, maybe you just stop talking and show a clip of something as
Yeah.
something else, yeah?
Yeah, I think you can because it's taking the focus in a new direction. Getting them to get out of their seats if you're in a seated class is a really big positive for student learning because it moves the body and the brain, moving and the blood flow. That actually makes a difference too. So anytime we can also have them physically out of their chair for, 30 seconds, that's okay. That's a good thing. All right, let's talk more about them doing stuff. We should be expecting participation. This is not like a bonus day for us as teachers when students finally talk. This should be the norm. Students should be participating regularly, and we have to recognize that participation looks different for different students and that not all students can participate right away. So I want to talk about microwaves and crock pots. I am a microwave. I think really fast and I talk really fast, and sometimes the stuff is good and sometimes it tastes like microwave food, right? Like sometimes it's not so good because it's so quick. My husband is a crock pot. He takes longer. He thinks longer. His stuff is juicier when it comes out, right? Crock pots take a while. They simmer and the flavor is there, but you can't eat it right away. You got to give it the few hours, right? So if we think about our students, we have variations of the microwaves and crock pots. Every student has their own processing time. And a lot of classrooms are set up for microwaves. A lot. And I'm guilty of it too. I'll ask a question and I'll look, and if nobody's ready to answer, I'll want to just start talking again. We have got to be better about creating space for students to think and process, right? We've got to give that time, and that creates more equity. Because if all I ever do is call on the student whose hand's up first, then I'm not calling on students who probably have really good ideas, but would have gotten to them 30 seconds after, right? So plan in wait time. You can even announce wait time. Like, I want to give you a minute to think about this. Jot it down and then stand there and wait, because it's amazing how much better the responses will be and how much more comfortable you'll be calling on students when you've given them that wait time. Tell them that their participation is important. Tell them you're going to call on them if you plan on calling on them. I always would broadcast at the beginning of the semester, I will be calling on you. This is an active class. I'm going to be asking you questions all the time. I take your learning seriously, and I'm going to consider you a serious student in this class. And then strategies for how to do it. There's all sorts of like things you can do with like paper clips, or not paper clips, but like clothespins, sticks. I think Annalise Hagedorn uses popsicle sticks and like put students' names on those. You could use something like the wheel of names. So if you're worried about like calling on the same students all the time, there are definitely little strategies for that as well. What are your thoughts? I saw a reaction from somebody and it disappeared because I was too busy talking.
I'm really working on being comfortable with waiting. When I ask a question, I expect my students to answer it. And I've really been aware of that lately. I've had to say, okay, give them a couple minutes. Silence is okay. So that's something I'm currently working on.
Thank you for sharing that, Josh. I'm not alone. What's your idea, Aaron? You got a light bulb.
No, I was liking Josh's idea.
Yeah. To work on it. And yeah.
Yeah.
I think that we tell students how to show up with the way we react to their response time. If we ask a question and within 5 seconds we start talking again, what if we just told them?
We didn't really care about what you had to say anyway.
Yeah, and we've all done it. We do it all the time. I do it too, right? But when we can actually just sit there and wait and be a little uncomfortable, usually one of them will crack.
I have an idea that I could share.
Yeah, good.
I have on, so a particular day, we take students to clinicals.
Yeah.
And so this semester on Wednesdays, I have the opportunity to be with a small group of students. And then it's after the clinical setting, I have an activity where I ask questions. And so I will ask a question, and I give them a few minutes, they might have to come up with 5 to 10 things that they would list out to answer my question. And then I just go through the group. Well, Sarah, can you tell me one thing that you put on your list? Josh, can you give me something different that you put on your list? And I just go around the group, and I need everybody to tell me something different that you listed. And I might go around a couple of times. If I had a list of 10 things, I might go around the group a couple of times, but everybody gets a chance to speak. And I want to hear something different. And we talk about the things that they might offer. So there's these little tiny discussions that are happening, and everybody has a chance to participate and offer up something that they thought was an answer to the question.
That sounds exactly like what we're talking about here.
And
Yeah.
I do sit there and wait. I don't give them the answers. They have to give the answers. I just pose the question.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move to this one. Lead with curiosity. This one came to me a little later than I wish it had. And that's probably because I'm a really good storyteller. I like to make up stories. And in my great storytelling tradition, I would tell myself stories about why students were doing what they were doing. I would fill in the blanks, and students were talking because they didn't want to pay attention. Students were, messing in their desk because they didn't like what we were doing in the class. It took me a while to come to the realization that there were a whole lot of other reasons why students might be showing up in the way that they were. And that those students who were talking, well, one of them was actually explaining something to the other one because he didn't get it, right? And the student who was fiddling in his desk, well, that student probably was struggling in that moment with some attention deficit stuff, right? So there's reasons why our students are doing things. And I need to always work to say, I wonder what might be happening for that person. And instead of telling a story, I need to go to that student or go to that class and ask questions and be curious. When we do that, we give students an opportunity to tell us their story themselves. And so asking a question, like if I see students talking when they shouldn't be, I might quietly go over to them and say something like, hey, is everything okay? And just check in and try not to have a tone, right? It's hard. Try not to have a tone, finding out do you need anything? Can I help? Right? Like asking a simple question like that can be very disarming. And if they were up to no good, then they're like, oh, she saw us, right? And if they need help, then I'm there and I'm available and I can get some understanding about what was going on. That completely changed the way I showed up in classes, especially with more challenged students, right? And you're thinking, well, yeah, 13-year-old boys are all probably challenging, and a lot of them were, right? But when I started doing that and not taking it so personally, because I'm the movie of my life or I'm the star in my own movie, they're the star in theirs, and I'm not that important, right? They're not doing it to me. So instead I lead with curiosity. Curious about what you think about leading with curiosity. Is this hard? Is this something that you do?
I think I would do it to an extent, but when I can hear what they're talking about and it's not relevant, then I'm going to tell them to be quiet. Not
Sure,
like,
of course.
what are you doing? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to promote naivete, right? Like
Right.
we weren't burned yesterday. Anything else?
Right. Yeah. A lot
Josh?
of times they're loud enough to know.
Oh yeah, sure.
Just a good reminder with an experience I had today. A student of mine was falling asleep, and my first go-to was like, why aren't they paying attention? It's being disrespectful. But I've been thinking after class, I was like, well, maybe they worked late or whatever happened. So it's a good reminder to go back to those students and just check in with them to
Yeah,
remind them that we care.
exactly. Because ultimately we do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't be offended if we didn't care. Yeah. All right, let's talk about this one. I think that we like to think we're pretty good with this, and I think we could always be better. So when we are seeing positive behavior, we want to promote that positive behavior by giving positive feedback, whether it's written feedback or even in class saying, "Oh, I really like that question. I could tell you really read I could tell you read the chapter by that question." Communicating our attention to their learning and their behavior through our positive feedback is going to promote more of that thing, right? So I don't want to get too into the behaviorism thing, but if we reward the behavior we want, we will get more of it. So I encourage us to do that, but also to make sure that we're being specific and authentic. So if we just go, "You're awesome," yeah, that doesn't tell them anything. And I think that we want to try to let them know exactly what it is that we appreciate about their contribution or their work so that they know what it is that they need to repeat. I also want to point out my little note here at the bottom. That comes from English Studies research. Grading essays for years and years, I too was guilty of having lots of constructive comments and then maybe putting like one good job somewhere in a vague space, right? And so that's my reminder that instead of finding just the one thing, like try to provide balanced feedback, right? You can't address every constructive thing all at the same time. So pick a few things and then find some positives too, because we all need that. Positive feedback again ties into that affective learning piece, right? Gives them those pluses. Last one, make learning contextual. Now, this is a big deal for me. It's something I studied pretty extensively when I was working on my graduate degree, because I found, especially with a general education course like English, I needed to figure out what it was that made students interested in a writing class, and it was usually not English class. It was usually something tied to getting through that class. But what I learned along the way, of course, is that our brains have these schema that are already alive and well before they ever come into contact with our content area. And that when we can bring new information in and then help a student connect to that existing schema, we help them learn. So getting them to when they ask that question, is like, how is this related to anything I care about? What they're asking for is, help me contextualize this in a way that's meaningful for me. And we all want that. We can tap into their motivation by doing that, and that's going to promote that effective learning domain, and it's going to help them learn. So using their major, using relevant recent examples that are also appropriate for today's climate and education, using their interests, all of that can also help. And put it on them, have them come up with examples that are relevant to them. Because when they're doing the work, again, they are constructing the knowledge. Curious to know if you all are doing this, how you do it, especially again in courses that may not seem as directly related to their program of study.
I do it a lot
Yeah.
because well, it's easier to do in psych, I guess. So they have a writing assignment, but they have to go find a current event art, like a news article that relates to class and tell me how it relates to class and their thoughts on it. But it's all whatever they want to do in whatever direction they want to go. And all of my discussion boards are always opinion based of look at this and tell me your thoughts on it. Not how does it relate to class necessarily, but here's something that does relate to class and tell me your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
We do similar things with 120. I have movie analysis for different chapters, and I'll let them pick the movie they want to analyze, for example, for conflict or verbal and nonverbal communication,
Yeah.
trying to give them a buy-in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great universal design for learning to include more choices in our learning activities. It's great. And that they're bringing that context in, it matters to them, right?
Yep.
Yeah. What else, Karen?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you all may or may not know that there's an annual health fair that the nursing students do, and it's every fall. And they get to pick. So I guide it by providing a list of health issues that are faced by our community, but each group gets to pick. The list is maybe 25 or 30 different topics, and each group gets to pick the topic that they want to do. And they're going to write a paper about it, and they're going to create an educational activity for the health fair. And there are a few things. Again, next semester, they get to pick another topic that they're going to focus on for a project. So even in nursing school, we try to give them the freedom to pick a topic. Here's the assignment, and there are some parameters around it, but you get to pick the topic you want to focus on.
Yeah. And I know they love those projects and they love the health fair. They do a great job with that. Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted. We've talked about a lot of strategies, and I am now asking you to think about which of these strategies you could implement. Now, you may already be doing a lot of them, which is great, but if there's something new that you haven't tried before and you'd be willing to try, I also want to hear from you on that. So with appropriate wait time, I'm going to give you a minute. I'm not going to put a timer up, but I'm going to give you a minute to just kind of reflect and think. And then I'm going to ask for us as our ticket out today for us to each share a strategy that we might try. And if you're at a place where you don't think you have a strategy to try, your strategy could be, I'm going to think more about strategies to try. So let's give ourselves a minute and we'll check in. Okay. I'm excited and interested to know if there's a strategy that you want to try to implement. Who wants to start? Josh?
Sure. I'm going to work on communicating the organization of the class to my students at the beginning of each class, so they have that feeling of safety when it comes to what they're doing.
Who do you want to pass to?
Aaron.
I need to maybe do the occasional flip classroom and adhere to the 15-minute rule
Are you
more
talking too much?
regularly. No, well, no, not necessarily. Well, maybe, yes, at times. Yeah.
Who do you
So,
want to pass to?
but Dr. Karen, of course.
I really feel the need, and just hadn't thought of doing this. I feel the need to set clear expectations because, believe it or not, we have people who straggle into class late. They're on their phones during class, a variety of things like that. So I think just saying that right up front, maybe that would be helpful if I said, come to class prepared to engage in the topic that day, arrive on time, and stay engaged during class, so that you can get the most out of our time together. I think it would be good to say that, yet, maybe it'll make a difference, but it surely can't hurt to set those expectations up front.
You think they would know those things, but they may not know how much you care about those things, right? Yeah, yeah. Jenny, what about you?
So I don't learn names, and I don't know that I can learn names. I don't think that's a skill I have. But I thought about at the beginning of this semester doing the little name tents, and then the semester got away from me. But I thought about doing it and letting them make their own and color it how it like stickers, have stickers and do that on like the first day.
Yeah.
So next semester I'll be better and be better prepared for that. And then
Yeah.
my only thought is if they don't bring it every day, then I'm definitely not going to learn their names. So they'd have to keep track of their own tent and put it up. So
Yeah. I
I
think
have
even,
actually done that
yeah, it worked.
when I had a smaller classroom. Now I can't do it now because I can't even see to the back of the classroom. I
Right.
wouldn't be able to read it. But in a smaller classroom, I have done the name thing. It was very helpful. I gave them the piece of paper and the colored markers,
Right,
and
which is what I was going to do. Yeah.
yeah, let them do all that. And I told them, though, please save these because I'm going to want you to put it up
Right.
again, at least for the first few weeks while I'm trying to learn your names. And that worked out just fine.
Yeah. Well, y'all, I really appreciate your engagement with today's session. I hope you found it helpful and useful for your practice. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.